I have a question. Why are we paying for the pensions in Ukraine? Now, I know, this is something that is old news. We've been paying their pensions since the start of the war, almost. It was 2021, I believe, when that legislation went into effect. Our first package of funding to Ukraine, I believe, had a provision for that. I remember in 2022, somebody mentioned something about this, and I kind of dismissed it a little because I wasn't really sure what they were talking about, and I didn't believe it. But now I've kind of started looking into, like, what exactly are we funding over there? Well, we're funding survey systems. We're funding internal affairs. We're funding, yes, the war, but we're also funding their pension system. There's homeless veterans in the United States, by the way. Why are we funding pensions for people overseas when we have homeless veterans? Why are we funding pensions for people overseas when the inflation in our country is already so bad that it's estimated to cost the average family about $30,000 a year? Why is that? Have you sat and thought about this and asked yourself this question? Because you should if you hadn't. I mean, I see people every day living in shacks out in the woods, you know, struggling to get by. They're struggling to meet that $350 mortgage that they've got on their trailer. I see people that live in campers. And when I'm out there, I see people that are worse off even than that, sleeping in a tent. And when I come back into town, back to the office, I see people camped out in the alleyways. A lot of them are veterans. A lot of them are hooked on opiates. There's an opiate epidemic in this country, and in our city in particular. I live outside the city, thankfully, because this city just put out an advisory that for sex trafficking. Said, if you're a single female, consider having a friend out at night. Don't have children out after 9 or 10 p.m. I think their hard line was 10, but I think they suggested 9. Why? Why are we paying hundreds of billions of dollars? And that is what it is, hundreds of billions of dollars in overseas funding for Ukraine and Israel when we can't even deal with this problem. Our own economy is about as bad as... Even the Kamala Harris people say, oh, well, the economy's bad, but Kamala's going to fix it. Well, Kamala has been in charge of it, and it's only gotten worse. Kamala and Joe have been in charge of it. It's only gotten worse. The cost of groceries is astronomical, but we're sending money to Ukraine. Cost of gas is, what, 2.5 times what it was before the COVID pandemic? They'll tell you that, you know, we're producing more oil and natural gas, you know, right now than we were under Trump, but it's because it's under, you know, private contracts. They're drilling on private land for it. The cost of energy is insane. The bills are stupid. I remember thinking when I was a kid, you know, my dad cuts firewood for a living, makes $15,000, $20,000 a year, able to take care of his kids. And here I am, you know, thinking if I make 6 figures, you know, I'll have a good life. I can pretty much do whatever I want. I can have a nice car. Struggling to buy a used car, making 6 figures. I mean, I say struggling. I mean, I can do it and I can save money. But the amount of money that I save every month is getting to be less and less as the bills get more and more and more expensive. The money doesn't go as far. I'm pretty good with money and I'm managing to save every paycheck. A significant portion, if I can, but every bonus goes in, gets squirreled away. That's the way that you ought to manage money, but that number just gets smaller and smaller. And I know there's people that aren't as fortunate as I am who weren't able to work themselves through college like I was, weren't able to procure a job as good as mine, and they're struggling. And I see it especially with seniors who are debilitated with chronic diseases, and they're living in hellholes, man. They can't get a wheelchair that they need. They can't get a proper wheelchair cushion from their insurance because Medicare and Medicaid are having to cut back on everything. The VA is running out of money. Everybody's having to cut back, and in all reality, it's because our government is spending a crap ton of money on stuff that we don't need, and most of us don't want, frankly. Why is Congress voting these things through? You can call the Midwest flyover country and, mock people for coming from there. And, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, but I moved to the Midwest. And there's a lot of people here who are very, very poor. Now, it's just as bad on the West Coast, but there's a lot of people here that are poor and struggling, and there's not the tourism, there's not as much of the big manufacturing and industry in this particular part of the Midwest. This is mostly agriculture. And, if you can't get a job, there's a town I was in today where I was talking to a guy at the gas station. He said, if you don't got a job at the local chicken plant, he said, you're living in a single wide for your whole life. I mean, he was a cool guy. He was probably about 65 years old, still working his job at the gas station because he said, I can't afford to retire. And yet we're paying pensions in Ukraine. Why don't we take these 70-year-old Walmart greeters and give them a pension instead? Does anybody want to see their grandparent working as a greeter at Walmart or a cashier at a gas station? No, when you're in your 70s, you shouldn't have to work like that, especially when we're funding pensions overseas. I mean, that is the biggest middle finger to Americans. When you think, think about the last time you saw somebody, you went through a drive-through and there was somebody who was very clearly over 65 serving you your food. Do you think they want to be there? Not at that point in their life. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that job, but what I'm saying is when you're that old and, nowhere else is going to hire you because, they don't want to have to onboard somebody that's only going to work there a couple of years. So you end up with a lowest common denominator job as far as pay and as far as skills required to work there. And it's horrible. And we're funding pensions overseas. And we're funding drone strikes and bombs to kill brown children in the Middle East because that's what's important. Is that really what's important? I don't think it is. And I don't think that I'm out of line saying that every single person in Congress who votes for those bills obviously has ulterior motives and they don't give a damn about their constituency. They're so blinded by the politics of the world, the politics of other countries, and the money that's being put into their pockets by donors. It's not right. And, talking to that guy at the gas station today really just made me feel like, holy crap, Social Security is running out of money. Medicare and Medicaid are running out of money. When I'm 65, I better have saved up plenty of money for myself and my family because I'm not ever going to see Social Security. And these people are getting a job to supplement Social Security. Imagine if they didn't get Social Security. Now, Trump says he's going to take the tax off Social Security. I don't know. But I tell you what, that bought him a whole lot of votes with older folks because when they're having to take up an extra job just because they can't make ends meet and their Social Security doesn't cover everything anymore, that's a damn sad state of affairs, man. They paid into it for a good chunk of their life at least. And do they ever see any of the benefits? Well, they see some, but not enough. And Medicaid, man, what in the world? Medicaid running out of money. Why is Medicaid running out of money? Well, state mismanagement. Well, why is Medicare running out of money? Government mismanagement. There are too many damn bureaucrats with their fingers in the pie taking their little something every step of the way. When I'm writing an order to try to get a prescription for a wheelchair cushion, it's got to be sent to 2-3 different people. And I include myself in this. We all get a chunk of change from getting somebody a wheelchair cushion. Now, that doesn't seem right. if it comes right through the, the Medicare or Medicaid. You're not only are you paying a therapist who can tell you, myself, I can measure and do an assessment and say, this is the cushion somebody needs. I've got to take it to an ATP, and they got to sign it, and then they get their chunk. And then they take it and then of course the doctor who writes the script gets his chunk too. And then whoever the manufacturer and the issuer is, they take their money. By the time you're done, some of these wheelchair cushions, just the cushion, this isn't the wheelchair, just the cushion is $400. Now, who the hell can afford that? Well, luckily Medicaid usually covers those sort of things, but once Medicaid runs out of money, those are the first sorts of things to go, by the way. It's the durable medical equipment. That stuff starts to go away because doctor visits and whatever else is covered by Medicaid for people who don't have insurance or are underinsured, that's the part that they focus on. And we're funding pensions in Ukraine. This is why Donald Trump is going to win, by the way. If any of you who don't believe me, if you think I'm crazy, this is why Donald Trump is going to win. And when it happens, I'm not going to say I told you so, but I told you so.